everybody, this is Mike with On Point Preparedness. In several of my past videos I've shown you that the greatest threat to Christianity is the false Christ and Gospels that Paul spoke about to the Corinthians. While many like to use Joel Osteen, Rick Warren, and Carl Lentz as examples, there is yet another hiding in the bushes, and the symbolism is some of the craziest that I've seen. Second Baptist Church is a mega church spread over several locations within Houston, Texas. A subscriber contacted me asking to investigate the church as his spirit felt uneasy over several things he'd seen there. I had not recognized it immediately, but I did lightly cover this church during Christmas of 2016 as they hosted this absurd event called Christmas Under the Big Top. It was filled with clowns, acrobats, and amusement, but no real indication of anything related to Jesus Christ. With a church putting on this kind of major production, you know the shepherds of this church are leading the flock astray. Little did I know how deep-rooted in the occult this church was. Before I start to show you some of this stuff, I have to mention that there are more than likely a lot of good people that go here, and also some good Bible studies that probably occur in small groups. However, the people running this joint are allowing the Antichrist spirit to dwell there. And we all know that we are in the end times, and it's no doubt in my mind that when things get really bad, the leaders of this church will lead the congregation into false doctrines. So let's begin. First, you can see here the Second Baptist Church front sign says Hidden Wisdom. That is essentially the theme of this entire church, as the word occult literally means hidden. I want you to check out these photos of their main campus, because it immediately gives me the creeps. I'm going to come back to these photos to discuss some really in-depth symbolism, but I mean, this should just really creep you out and set off some alarm bells. It looks like something out of the Illuminati movie Eyes Wide Shut or something. There are multiple services at this church, but their central time that they provide big press about is the 11:11 service. The number 11, and especially the time 11:11, is deep-rooted in the occult and the New Age. Here's what they display on their monitors at 11:11 right when the Mass starts. It's the word 11 followed by the same word, only inverted and spelled backwards. I've covered this before as the apparent as above, so below inversion of Baphomet and the Antichrist. The central ideology of this concept is to twist and invert God's creation. The sad thing is that many churches are following this ideology. You can see this advertisement from the Christian World Explosion Tour, where they invert the images of churches to the Father's Prayer. You can also see this in the big Pope Francis sponsored 2016 Reset movement on the Washington Mall, where they inverted the hashtag Jesus Changes Everything. But let's look at 11 and 11:11 a little more closely. The number 11 is a big number in Kabbalism and Satanism. You'll find various meanings across the internet, but central themes around this number are symmetry or blending of male and female, sun and moon energy, or otherwise just indicating balance. It's also a big representation of power. In Daniel 7 verses 7 through 8, when talking about the horns that appear on the end times beast of Revelation, it states there are 10 horns. However, a little horn sprouts up amongst them and plucks 3 horns out by its roots. Therefore, this 11th horn is very powerful. The most well-known occultist Aleister Crowley had stated in the Book of the Law, "My number is 11, as all their numbers who are of us." So Crowley is specifically stating that he is the powerful master number 11. But as the Antichrist is legion or hive mind in nature, he is also the number of all others who are of their cause. If you also look at mass chaos incidents that gave the elite power, the number 11 has also been used. For example, 9/11. We see this representation of power in occult movies as well, using 11. You're probably already thinking about the character 11 from Stranger Things. This girl represents pretty much everything I just spoke of. She seems androgynous, or has the characteristics of male and female. She is the character with the greatest power, the power to actually bring worlds together or rip space and time dimension. And what a great segue that is to what 1111 means. A while back I did this video on the collision of worlds and how the number 8 or Ouroboros represented time. That 88 represents a crashing of two worlds together, or the coming together of two times. 1111 essentially represents the same thing, although much more prominently and less hidden. You will find New Agers all over the place stating that 1111 represents a spiritual awakening, that at this point in time, some type of synchronicity happens where you have a gateway to the other world. They state if you keep on seeing 1111, there is something calling for you in the other realm. Other New Agers, like this individual named George Barnard, said that 1111 is the calling card for beings that are half angels and half humans, otherwise what we know as the Nephilim. However, although not in scripture, he states that 1,111 angels were faithful to Lucifer to enlighten humanity and fell with him. Regardless of the slight differences in interpretation, its core meaning remains unchanged, a synchronistic time that the occult used to communicate with the spirit world, another means of opportunity for blending dimensions. And so here we have this church really glorifying the number 11 and the 1111 time, numbers that represent demonic power and chaos and the opening of dimensions. Just really crazy stuff. So now let's go back to these original photos I showed before. From the inside, you can see that the altar and ceiling is in the shape of an octagon. I'll get to that in just a second. But first, here's the inside of some ancient Catholic baptisteries, specifically one in Florence. You'll notice the 8-sided architecture. If we look at the outside of the Second Baptist Church, you'll find that the octagon is covered by a dome. Likewise, baptisteries are covered with a dome. So we can clearly see that this architecture is based off of ancient Catholic designs. All the roads lead to Rome, right? So now that we know where this architecture comes from, we can better understand how the Vatican used this architecture for satanic purposes. Per the book Mark A. Reynolds, The Octagon in Leonardo's Drawings, he states, in the number symbolism of medieval Europe, 8 was seen as representing cosmic balance and eternal life. Related to this, the octagon had a deep significance for the Roman Catholic Church. The octagon and the star octagram were religious symbols for rebirth and resurrection. It was used in baptismal fonts in many churches, large and small, throughout the entire country. So this trail leads us to believe that the Roman Catholic Church created these octagon structures as a symbol of rebirth or resurrection, and it's tied to the 8-sided octagram star. If you research the octagram star, you'll find that it is a symbol of Ishtar, or our modern-day Easter holiday. However, Ishtar was not the celebration of Jesus' birth. It was the rebirth of one of Nimrod's sons named Tammuz. If you didn't already know, Nimrod was the grandson of Noah in the Bible, and essentially became the first person to lead a worldwide rebellion against God. So, the origin of octagonal altars relate to a false, non-Christian rebirth. What else does this structure provide us? Well, let's look back at the dome. In the book, A History of Octagon Homes and Octagonal Structures by Topsider Homes, it states, over the years the octagon has been used in constructing churches and temples for its many spiritual representations. When used as a dome, it symbolizes joining the physical to the spiritual. Essentially what that says is the square, rectangular, or octagonal bases of the church represented the earth, or everything we know about our dimension. The dome, which is feminine in nature, represents the spiritual dimension. Therefore, the base altar and the dome, connected by the walls, signify man's attempt at recreating the joining of the physical to the spiritual. Now, for those of you new to this symbolism, this may seem a little bit out there, but if you research dome structures and phallic symbols, much like the Washington Monument and the Capitol, or the obelisk at the Vatican paired with the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, you start to get an understanding that this is all real. Additionally, the references I provide are all architectural books, and they're not conspiracy websites. The other linkage of the octagon with the occult is the tesseract, or a four-dimensional analog of the cube. If you research the cube of Saturn, which is also Satanism, you'll find that occultists have a great deep affinity to cubes. Looking at the 4D representation of a cube within a cube, you get an octagonal shape. Freemasons represent this as a hewn cube within a rough cube. It's the Antichrist builder ideology that man's hewn stone is better than rough stones of nature. Here again, the Second Baptist Church has music and other presentations associated with the cube and a cube symbolism, much like we see with other technology companies like Nintendo or some other banks. Lastly, if you look at this church's teachings and past events, you'll see that these symbols manifest into true physical Antichrist actions. For one, the church has had past incidents like this one, where a sexual allegation lawsuit was made that made claims that Second Baptist youth pastor Chad Foster targeted victims under the guise of spiritual leadership. Second, and more importantly, this church and lead pastor Dr. Ed Young Sr. have joined the fleet of teaching that counter-Reformation spirituality is to be encouraged for Protestants. Just like Joel Osteen and Rick Warren, he is wanting to unify his church with the Roman Catholic Church under this new one-world religion, or is essentially embracing that theology. So friends, the warning signs are all around this church. Particularly, I'm astounded that with 64,000 members, it is the largest Baptist church in the United States, and it is the fifth largest church across all denominations. Yet no one knows or is talking about online the apostasy that is occurring here. They glorify hidden wisdom with Mass at 11:11, the occult time of unifying physical and material realms. Their architecture with the octagonal altar with dome ceiling is yet another representation of the unifying of physical and material realms. They eagerly want to unify with Pope Francis and his one world religion. If you are attending this church or have friends and family that are attending this church, I would strongly recommend that you consider leaving. As I mentioned before, we are in the last days, and when it really hits the fan and people are desperately seeking spiritual comfort, they will be at their weakest. Is this the kind of church you want to depend on when that happens? This is Mike with On Point Preparedness. I hope you enjoyed this film. If you'd like, please do consider supporting me on Patreon, as YouTube has been significantly demonetizing my channel. God bless.